Rain fell like whispers over the luminous shell of the crashed transport vessel, its warped hull half buried in the pine forest of northern Alberta. Trees bowed beneath its weight, as if nature herself had been stunned by the intrusion. Flickering blue runes lined the jagged seams of the impact, pulsing faintly, like the final heartbeats of a dying beast. From within the fractured pod, something stirred. She emerged slowly, her obsidian skin glistening with streaks of silver beneath the storm. Her eyes, slitted, violet, and gleaming with layered pupils, scanned the unfamiliar terrain. Her breathing was uneven, not from fear, from calculation. Her name was Velasha of the Myri'dar Clutch, daughter of Admiral Corvine, third tactician of the Thrailer fleet. She had been sent on an intelligence mission to study Terran species covertly. Her mission had failed spectacularly. She stumbled forward, sensors fried, locator disabled. Her armor fractured. Her knowledge of this planet? Theoretical at best. But even theory couldn't explain the sound that interrupted her failing emergency beacon. A voice. "Whoa, hey, are you hurt?" She spun instinctively, claws sliding free from beneath her palm scales. Her breath caught. The human male before her was unlike anything she had prepared for. No exosuit, no visible weaponry, just a soaked canvas jacket, muddy boots, and a cautious kindness in his amber eyes. He raised his hands. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. I saw the crash." Velasha hissed a wordless warning. She didn't speak his language yet. Her translator implant rebooted slowly, catching fragments. Names? Draven. Draven. A strange name. A soft name for a predator. And yet, he wasn't moving to strike. His voice held no dominance. No pheromonal charge of a pre-mating threat. Confusion warred with protocol in her chest. This male wasn't initiating dominance displays. No aggression. No snapping mandibles or biting feints. He extended a hand toward her. Not clawed. Not armored. Just bare, warm flesh. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere dry." Velasha blinked twice. The logic processors in her mind offered no explanations. This male was helping her? Draven's cabin stood nestled beneath the curve of a moss-covered cliff, built from cedar logs and human patience. Inside, firelight flickered like the glow crystals of her homeworld. The warmth touched her like no technology ever had. She studied the surroundings, tools, books, a framed photo of Draven with an elderly woman, presumably kin. He handed her a towel and a mismatched bundle of flannel. "Didn't know your size. Hope this works." She stared at the fabric. It was soft, meant for protection, not domination. No thermal nodes, no defense plating. Just warmth. He turned away, giving her privacy, something utterly foreign to her species. Among the Myri'dar, privacy was weakness. Vulnerability was scent-tracked and punished. But here, this male showed restraint. She found herself watching the way he moved. Confident but not performative. His presence didn't demand submission, it invited observation. He spoke again. "What's your name?" "You got a name." Her implant sparked. Language mesh finally syncing. "Velasha," she said slowly, voice low and metallic. He smiled. "Nice to meet you, Velasha." She narrowed her eyes. "You not afraid?" He shrugged, tossing more logs onto the fire. "You're not trying to kill me. That's a good start. On Thrailer, first meeting, always combat." He gave a dry laugh. "Sounds exhausting." She watched him. So open, so strange, so unthreatening, yet still strong. She didn't understand it, but she wanted to. Later that night, as rain turned to snow, she sat by the fire while Draven brewed a strange, smelling liquid called tea. "Humans?" she said suddenly. "You do not devour females during breeding?" He choked on his drink. "Devour? What? No. We definitely don't eat our partners." Velasha's head tilted in fascination. But in Thrailer, consumption of mate shows dominance. Passion. Highest form of affection. Draven looked both amused and slightly disturbed. "Well, remind me never to date a Thrailer." She considered this. "So, how do human males Express interest? He hesitated. It's more about gestures. Words. Connection. We show we care. Protect. Support. Touch. But gently. Velasha leaned forward, claws retracted. Touch gently, as in without threat. He nodded. Her mind spun. This contradicted everything she knew about mating hierarchies. Yet, there was something about Draven's softness that called to a quiet ache inside her. A longing she had never dared name. I must study this, she whispered. Draven raised a brow. You're the strangest guest I've ever had. And you, Velasha said slowly, are the gentlest male I have ever seen. Their eyes locked, and something ancient stirred between stars and soil. Snow blanketed the forest like a hush across the world, muting the distant howl of wind and creature alike. Within the cabin, the fire burned lower, casting long shadows that danced like silent spirits across the walls. Velasha sat curled in an old woven blanket, her knees drawn up, golden eyes scanning the strange symbols in one of Draven's books. He had called it poetry, and though the words themselves were primitive, the emotional resonance in them stirred something restless within her. She glanced up at him as he poured more water into a kettle, humming softly to himself, the tune unrecognizable and yet oddly comforting. She had studied his kind through distant probes and filtered reports, but none of that had prepared her for the presence of a human male like him. Compassionate without being weak, curious without being invasive. Draven noticed her gaze and gave a small smile. Can't sleep. She shook her head slowly. Your air, thinner than Thrailer, and warm liquid makes my pulse settle. He brought the steaming mug to her hands without hesitation, his fingers brushing hers. It was only a moment, a brief contact of skin to scale, but something passed between them. An echo of curiosity and something deeper, more primal. Velasha stilled, surprised by the way her body responded. Not with the bristling defense her kind knew, but with a quiet calm, a sense of wanting more. Why did you rescue me? She asked, voice hushed. You could have left me to the elements, or turned me over to your authorities. Draven shrugged, settling into the armchair beside her. Guess I don't see the point in letting someone suffer if I can help it. Even if that someone might be dangerous? He met her eyes, unflinching. You don't feel dangerous. You feel alone. She blinked slowly. Among the Myri'dar, solitude is earned. Companionship is political, strategic. Affection is rare. Passion is war. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And you, what did you earn? Velasha hesitated. I was chosen as a high-clutch daughter. My worth measured in obedience and tactical precision. I trained in void combat, seduction as subterfuge. I was never taught warmth. Draven's gaze softened. Then maybe it's time you learned. She didn't know how to respond. There were no codes, no rituals for this. No calculated angles to exploit. Just this man, offering kindness without price. And that unsettled her more than any weapon ever could. That night, she watched him from the other side of the room as he slept. His chest rose and fell in rhythmic calm. She could hear the beat of his heart. Steady, open, unguarded. Among her people, sleeping in another's presence was a sign of trust deeper than contracts. And Draven had done it without hesitation. In her mind, a dangerous thought bloomed. Could this human be the bond she never knew she craved? Morning broke with the smell of firewood and eggs sizzling. She joined him silently in the kitchen, and he handed her a plate. I tried to guess what you could eat. Figured I'd start with protein. She examined the food suspiciously. It does not move. That is unusual. He chuckled. That's the idea. Want me to cook it while it's still alive? No, she said quickly, then paused. I appreciate the gesture. They ate in silence for a time. Then she asked, Are there others like you? You mean humans who help strangers without question? He smiled sadly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just weird. I do not think you are weak, she said carefully. But your strength, it is different. Not teeth and dominance. It is restraint. Empathy. He blinked. That's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten from an alien warrior. You are not like the males I trained to subdue. I'll take that as a compliment too. Later, while she helped him chop wood behind the cabin, he asked something unexpected. Back there, before we understood each other, you looked ready to kill me. Why didn't you? She paused, axe balanced in her hand. You extended your hand. It was disarming. You mean that literally, don't you? Yes, she admitted. In Myri'dar code, such a gesture from a male during combat would signal either surrender or an invitation to bond. Draven's brows rose. And what do you think I meant? I am still uncertain. He stepped closer. Snowflakes caught in his hair, melting into rivulets down his neck. Maybe I was doing both. Her breathing quickened. You do not fear me, even now. I probably should, but something tells me I don't need to. They stood like that for a long time, neither speaking, the space between them thick with tension. Not the dangerous kind, but something else. Something growing. That evening, she allowed him to touch her arm again. His fingers brushed the pale silver lines of her clan markings, traced them as if memorizing the language of her body. She didn't flinch, didn't snarl. Instead, she leaned in slightly, catching his scent. Pine, smoke, and the salt of sweat. It stirred instincts she had long buried. When his hand reached her cheek, she closed her eyes. You're not like them, he whispered. Nor are you, she murmured. They did not kiss, not yet. But the space between them closed with a silent agreement, one written not in treaties or contracts, but in the language of shared loneliness. Velasha lay awake later, alone in the far corner of the cabin. Her body yearned for answers, her mind warred with caution. Among the Myri'dar, bonding was irreversible, permanent. But what of this fragile, alien thing blossoming between them? She touched her lips, imagining his. What if gentleness was strength? What if surrender was not weakness? What if she wanted to be his? And for the first time in her life, Velasha of the Myri'dar wondered what it would feel like to be loved, without fear. The wind had shifted. Days had passed since Velasha first set foot inside the wooden shelter that defied everything she knew of Earth's primitive species. The strange softness in the human male had not diminished. It had only deepened. And despite every warning drilled into her through years of thrailer training, she had not fled. She had not called for rescue. She had stayed, because something in her was changing. She now knew how Draven liked his tea. Just before it boiled, steeped until it darkened like old blood. She knew that he hummed when he was thinking, that his hands trembled only slightly when he was tired, and that he whistled when he was uncomfortable. These were details, small, irrelevant data, but they had begun to matter. That morning, she watched him from the porch as he repaired a section of the railing damaged by the snowstorm. His muscles worked beneath his jacket, fluid and deliberate. Not showy, not performative, just capable. There was no war in his movements, but there was power. She realized she liked watching him, not as a threat, but as something else. He looked up and caught her staring. You okay? I am unsure, she replied. About what? About everything. He came to stand beside her. That makes two of us. She turned her head, met his gaze. On Thrailer, if a male stared at a female for longer than one breath, it was a challenge. He smiled. And what happens if the female doesn't look away? Then it becomes a game of dominance. He reached out, slowly, his fingers brushing the back of her hand. And if neither wants to win? She looked down at his fingers. So gentle. Then perhaps it becomes something else. They spent that day in silence. Not out of discomfort, but of understanding. Each movement, each glance was a conversation. He chopped wood. She hunted rabbits in the snow with efficiency that impressed even him. They cooked together, sat together, and by nightfall, the air between them felt stretched to the edge of something unspeakable. Later, Velasha sat on the floor near the hearth, turning a human spoon over in her hand as if it held some ancient wisdom. Draven knelt beside her, close enough that she could hear his heartbeat. Steady. Grounding. "I've been thinking," he said softly. She didn't look up. "About what?" "About you. About how weird this is. And how not weird it feels at the same time." Her fingers tightened on the spoon. "You are unlike anything I expected. We were taught your species was unpredictable, dangerous, emotionally unstable." He nodded. "Some of us are. You are not." "I've had my days," he said with a half-smile. "But I meant what I said before. You don't feel like a danger. You feel like someone who's just trying to survive." She looked up then. Her voice was low, raw. "I have never survived with anyone. Only against them." He moved closer, the air warming between them. "Then let's try something different." Velasha's breath hitched. "This will not be easy." He nodded. "I don't want easy." She tilted her head, confused. "Then what do you want?" His voice was a whisper. "You, just as you are." Her pulse quickened. Among her kind, these words would be a declaration of combat, a prelude to mating through power. But this was something softer, more dangerous. His hand reached for her cheek again, and this time she let him. The warmth of his skin against her cooler scales ignited something in her chest that had no name in any Thrailer dialect. "You do not fear my touch?" she asked. "I want your touch," he replied. Their lips met with the cautious wonder of first breath. It was not conquest. It was not battle. It was an offering. Velasha had kissed before, but never like this. Her kind bit clawed, dominated. But Draven's mouth moved with reverence, not hunger. When he pulled away, her heart ached with the loss. "Why are you kind to me?" she whispered. "Because you deserve it. I was trained to deceive." He shrugged. "You're not deceiving me now. I could kill you," she said, but even her voice trembled. "Then why don't you?" She had no answer. That night, they lay beside one another beneath thick furs. Not entwined. Not yet. But close. Close enough for shared warmth and quiet understanding. "I don't understand this," she said into the dark. "Neither do I," he replied. "But I want it," she admitted. "So do I." She didn't sleep much, too busy memorizing the rhythm of his breath, the feel of his presence beside her. For the first time in her life, she didn't prepare for betrayal, didn't calculate escape. Instead, she wondered how long she could stay. At dawn, snow still falling like secrets from the sky, she stood outside and looked toward the clouds. Her transmission beacon had finally repaired itself. She could send a message. She could call for rescue and lose him, or she could stay. She tapped the device, fingers trembling. But she didn't activate it. Not yet. There was still something unfinished between them. And she wanted to know what it felt like, not just to survive, but to belong. "Would you like me to continue with the final part?" The thaw came slowly, as if the world itself hesitated to release its grip on winter. Snow still clung to the edges of the pines and lined the roof like delicate lace, but the sun now lingered longer in the sky. Streams began to whisper beneath their icy sheaths, and birds returned in cautious pairs. Life was waking. Velasha stood barefoot on the wooden porch, letting the unfamiliar chill kiss the soles of her feet. Her skin, silvered and resistant, did not flinch, but her soul did. Something inside her had begun to shed its own frozen armor, and she didn't know if she was ready for what would grow in its place. Behind her, she heard the sound of movement, the rustling of flannel, the scratch of a beard being absently touched, the unmistakable exhale of someone waking slowly beside a fire he had tended without fail. She had learned every sound of him. Draven emerged in the doorway, mug in hand. He leaned against the frame, watching her, expression unreadable but warm. Always warm. "You okay?" he asked again, as he had every day. Velasha nodded, then shook her head. "No, I am changing, and it terrifies me." He stepped out, letting the cold bite into his skin as he stood beside her. "Change usually does. I was not designed for this," she admitted. "We don't form attachments. Not like this. Not with softness." Draven looked out at the woods, silent for a moment. Then, who told you softness was weakness? My bloodline, my commanders, my own reflection. He turned toward her. They lied. She met his gaze. I want to stay, but I can't keep running from what I was made to be. You're not running, he said gently. You're choosing. Her voice faltered. If I stay, they will come. I know. They'll find me. He took her hand. Then let them come. You don't understand what they'll do to you. His grip didn't loosen. No, but I understand what I'll do to keep you. Her heart trembled in her chest. The transmission beacon still lay dormant beneath the floorboards, blinking like an unanswered question. She had only to activate it, and a retrieval ship would come. A clean escape, an end to this tenderness. But she hadn't touched it in days. Instead, she'd let Draven teach her how to live without armor, how to breathe without permission, how to touch and not expect pain in return. She turned toward him fully now, letting her fingers rest on the side of his face. I could still leave. I could vanish and no one would follow me here. I know. I could go back to who I was, to what I know. But you won't. She lowered her head. No, I won't. He took her in his arms then, no longer cautious, no longer gentle with his hesitation. There was still a reverence in his touch, but now it was joined by certainty, by want. Their kiss was no longer a question. That night, they made love beneath the old beams of the cabin, the fire painting their bodies in flickers of gold and shadow. Velasha let herself surrender, not to conquest or domination, but to presence, to trust, to desire that asked for nothing but her truth. He traced her clan marks with his mouth, his hands learning her like a song sung in reverse, each note unexpected, each pause deliberate. She trembled beneath him, not from fear but from recognition. This was no simulation, no tactic. This was connection, real, earned. After, as they lay tangled in sweat and breath, she whispered, "My species. We believed your males to be volatile, barely civilized, consumed by primal urges." Draven chuckled softly. "We can be. But you are different. You did not take. You gave. You waited. I wanted all of you, not just your body." She looked up at him. "Do human males always wait like this?" "Not always. But when we care, we don't want to devour. We want to protect." Her voice cracked. "And the others, the Myri'dar, they will never understand this. They will call it failure. Then let them call it what they want." In the silence that followed, Velasha reached beneath the floorboards. The beacon was cold in her palm, lifeless. She lifted it, studied the dull light, then crushed it between her fingers with a strength born not of war, but of choice. Draven said nothing. He only held her tighter. When spring broke fully, they walked the ridgeline hand in hand. Velasha wore a coat of his, oversized and fragrant with pine and sweat. Her hair, now unbraided, blew wild in the wind. She had started laughing. Not the sharp, sarcastic kind her kind used in feints and feuds, but real laughter, deep, unrestrained, startling. Villagers eventually saw her. Some whispered, some watched, but none approached. They saw the way Draven stood beside her, unafraid, resolute, and they understood something ancient, that whatever she was his now, and he was hers. In time, the forest accepted her. So did the soil. The birds no longer scattered when she walked. The deer no longer froze. Something in her presence had softened. She wasn't human. She never would be. But she was no longer just Myri'dar either. One night, as they sat watching the stars from the porch, she leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, "Tell me something true." Draven smiled. "All right, truth. I've never felt more alive than I do with you." She closed her eyes. "Then here is mine. I never wanted to mate. I was afraid I would lose myself. But now, I found something more. I found home." They kissed again, the stars burning quietly overhead. No battles, no orders, no bloodshed, just two souls from different worlds, writing a new kind of story, not one of survival, but of love.